bem-vindos a mais uma live assistindo porcaria, mas posicionamento questionável da webcam 12, dia 17 de 4 de 2025. Meu fone tá meio longe, porra. Bom, um quadro do colégio, Pedro Marques falando. Opa, lixo. Aqui. Licor do Rebellion. Bom. Vamos procurar a porcaria. Eu irei procurar. Isso aqui eu acho engraçado. Sempre tenho que mexer aqui na configuração. Vou escolher a página. Eu abri o meu próprio vídeo para caçar o nome do vídeo para colocar aqui, mas vamos voltar para a página inicial. Hoje especificamente não vai ter costura, nem cópia de matéria, e sim reescrita. Sim, eu vou fazer o meu relatório de estágio. Vocês não vão ver, vocês vão ver vídeo. E depois eu acho que vou fazer uns negócios bem brain hot aqui, bem zoado. O vídeo eu já sei até qual vai ser, ele tá aqui no meu histórico. São 3 vídeos em um só. É pra fazer vocês sofrerem até a morte com ele. Não é esse. Tá por aqui. Aqui. Vocês vão sofrer pra caralho. Muito, porra. Vocês vão sofrer pra caralho. Buceta.
Noticed that almost every currently airing cartoon had this.
Foda-se. Pronto. E aí? Não faço ideia quem seja mesmo, mas... Live, né? Brinde aí ao meu... uma pessoa que tá assistindo essa live de porcaria. Copinho, inclusive, é de qualidade. Tudo certo. Aproveitar que hoje eu só volto trabalho e só volta na terça-feira, semana que vem. Beleza, entendi. É forte esse bagaço aqui. Nossa. É bem doce. Mas vamos lá. Colocar o vídeo pra rodar. Velho, tem algum jeito de mostrar o chat, certeza, na tela, tipo... Não. Saco. Depois eu vou procurar na internet como... Não. Depois eu vejo na internet como fazer o chat aparecer na tela do computador mesmo, pra eu não ter que... não consegui ver o chat sem ter que entrar na tela do OBS. Deve ter algum jeito de fazer isso. Tem alguma configuração aqui. Texto, navegador, não. Imagem, fonte de mídia, cena. Ah, tá. Queria uma cena. de janela, apresentação de imagens. Depois, você tá no canal errado pra pedir isso. Isso aqui é um canal muito ruim. Mas beleza, você passa, posta o link aí do canal no chat, que daí eu consigo acessar. Gatos. Navegador. Aqui. Você coloca. Não. Esquece, isso aqui não vai. Eu vejo lá depois. Agora a gente. Eu vou ver coisa pra fazer o meu público sofrer muito.
Existe fazer você mesmo e existe
E não é a
fazer
propaganda.
você mesmo. É a...
Deixa eu. Assim.
Hi, this is the full supercut version of an iceberg chart series I created a few months ago. Parts 1, 2, and 3 are available on my channel if you want to watch them all individually. But this right here is the full trilogy.
Ótimo.
Before we start, I want to let you know a few things before going in, assuming you haven't seen the other parts. This iceberg chart is sorted based on popularity and obscurity, not by how bad the people or artwork is on a moral scale. I know there's been a trend of going from light to dark topics recently, but the original premise of an iceberg chart goes from well-known to lesser-known entries. If you're confused as to why people like Shadman are on the top, then there's your reason. I did try my best to sort it accurately to the best of my knowledge, but honestly looking back, I probably should have put some entries much higher or much lower. Also, some controversies are much more tame than others. A controversy or being infamous doesn't necessarily mean they've committed a crime or did a horrible action. Sometimes it could just be because people didn't like what they did or made for whatever reason. Of course, this is nowhere near a comprehensive list, as I'm barely scratching the surface of horrible art and artists to talk about. The ones on this iceberg chart are mostly based on my personal knowledge and memories of them. Final point, here's a list of every single YouTuber that helped me with the research for some of these entries. Could not have done this without them. Massive thank you to them all. With all of that out of the way, thank you all for tuning in, and let's begin with the full infamous internet art/artist iceberg. As the name implies, this is any and all artwork that has the intention of sexual gratification for either the artist or the viewer, specifically with more unorthodox areas of the body, certain situations, or just objects in general. With the rise of the internet, this sort of art has been made much more easy to access and view. Good for the gooners and coomers out there, I guess, but not so much for everybody else. Some examples of fetish art genres include vor, inflation, armpits, feet, giantess, diapers, bodily waste, ENF. I also want to make it clear that honestly, it's perfectly fine if you have some weird fetishes and like to draw or consume them. There's only really a problem once you start showing these images to people who aren't comfortable with them, or children in general. As long as you're keeping it within the confines of your 18+ community, then go crazy, I guess. A majority of you watching probably already know who this person is, so I'm gonna try my best to explain in the simplest, briefest way possible, because there's hours upon hours of lore to uncover on your own time. Dubbed as the most documented individual probably ever, Christine Weston Chandler is a 42-year-old high-functioning autistic trans woman with a long list of controversies and mishaps. This was accompanied by a decades-long trolling campaign the internet has taken out on Chris, which has led to incidents.
Só respondendo, mano, aí o canal parece interessante. Seu canal parece interessante, cara. Eu pesquisei aqui na barra da conta, do e-mail que eu uso da faculdade, só pra dar ideia, tipo, eu não vou me inscrever tanto com o perfil da faculdade, tipo. Não sei se eu vou assistir isso não. Acho que possivelmente eu não vou assistir. Voltando aqui a boboseira.
After incident, and a 60-plus episode long documentary series by Gino Samuel. The reason why they're on this iceberg is because of a comic they made back in the early 2000s, which has piqued the interest of millions of people. That comic being Sonichu. What originally started out as the adventures and life of Sonichu slowly just turned into a comic about Chris themselves. This comic is, well, it's not good, but that hasn't stopped Chris from becoming one of the most infamous artists on the internet. On August 1st, 2021, they were arrested for the crime of incest that they did to their own mother, who is 82 years old and may possibly have dementia.
Christian, what's up? Kill stream, baby! When you get out, let's do the kill stream! Look me up! When the charges drop.
Where the case was later dropped by the court. Again, I literally cannot fathom explaining everything in this video. If you want more lore, then go check out Gino Samuel or any other creators. The Wojak, or Feels Guy, is a popular meme format that's taken many variants throughout the years, usually used to mock somebody or represent a certain type of person by drawing them in a very unflattering way, using the base Wojak as a template. The origins of the original Wojak are relatively unknown, but we do know that they were named after a member of Crouchan called Wojak. Wojak says he found the original image off a Polish image board, but the true artist behind the Wojak is still unknown. For the most part, this meme has stayed on image boards like 4chan and the like in the 2010s, but around 2020 is where the Wojak completely blew up all over the internet. This is where you get your chads, virgins, tradwives, e-thoughts, etc. And also whatever the hell these variants are. A subspecies of the Wojak emerged from this, being dubbed the Soyjak. Soyjaks are a combination of the Wojak and the soy boy. Soy boys are a phenomenon of men who get made fun of for, simply put, being losers. The soy drinking, Nintendo Switch loving, patchy beard having, glasses wearing, wife sharing, Marvel slop enjoying, vegan consuming, science obsessing guy that seems to be everywhere is the essence of one of these soy boys. Soyjacks often depict these men pointing at things that they might enjoy or in various positions that make them look more annoying. These are often traced over real images of people and spread around, leading to people copying the poses in real life to further make fun of them. In 2020, the user Soot created a new image board as a joke called Soyjack.party after the Quay board was banned on 4chan, used for exclusively posting Soyjacks. This is where things get weird and controversial. Soyjack.party, otherwise known as the Shardy, had sort of an island effect for Soyjacks. These jacks would devolve into abhorrent and incomprehensible abominations when given their own exclusive platform to thrive on. On screen are some examples. Then things, of course, got offensive, and started to depict ethnic groups and other visible minorities in horrible ways, as things usually go on image boards. For more information, check out these videos on screen. Tim Buckley is a webcomic artist, mostly known for his series Control-Alt-Delete, following the self-insert character of Ethan, his girlfriend and epic gamer girl Lila, and his roommate Lucas. The webcomic mostly follows Ethan and his hijinks with video games. As a concept, I guess, it's kind of hard to describe. They just play video games, or talk about video games, or try to get more video games, or make jokes about video games, etc. It's very one note. The whole webcomic is just, heh, only real gamers get this one. Suffice to say, it's not good. Tim decided to draw one set of stock images back in like 2002, and he's been using them ever since for almost a decade, with very little improvement in his art style. It's just extremely lazy and not appealing to look at the same pose for the 1000th time. Eventually, the webcomic dropped the whole video game-centered focus, thank God. But Ethan just became like every other adult animated comedy protagonist, meaning eccentric and wacky adventures in life with zero improvement to the writing. People obviously did not like this, and got upset that they couldn't laugh at what the f***? But Tim didn't care. On February 15th, 2008, Control-Alt-Delete entered its pregnancy arc, where Lila tells Ethan that she's pregnant, and then he pisses himself. Keep in mind, this arc was inspired by real-life events that happened in his life, meaning his actual girlfriend was pregnant during this time. Sadly though, on June 2nd, 2008, Tim posted his most infamous and well-known strip to the public, where Lila has a miscarriage, titled Loss. And yes, this was also inspired by real-life events. People did not like this strip at all, mainly because of the huge change in tone that came out of nowhere. Control-Alt-Delete was supposed to be a comedy about video games. Now it's delving into real-life miscarriages and dark topics. Not to mention being pretty disrespectful to his own girlfriend, where he draws his OCs going through what she had to go through, almost like he's playing dolls. Lost actually has a part 2 and 3 with the aftermath of the miscarriage, and then gets right back to the jokes only a week later that same month. The strip garnered so much negative attention that people made several iterations of it with different characters and scenarios. This has been going on for over 15 years now. It's gotten to the point where this minimalist version with a bunch of lines is used as sort of a Where's Waldo game to see if you can find Lost in the wild. Funnily enough, on June 2nd, 2018, for the 10-year anniversary of Lost, Tim actually posted this strip where Ethan smirks at the audience at the end as an acknowledgement to the meme status of the strip. Hot Diggity Demon, also known as Max Gilardi, is an animator and YouTuber who's been posting online since 2003 and YouTube since around 2007, uploading his first video after dropping out at the Art Institute of Boston. Max is most well known for many original animations and parodies he's made throughout the years, like Wacky Game Jokes for Kids, Jerry, the Dot Mob series, and most recently Brain Dump. However, some of the animations and drawings he's made haven't really gone over too well with people online, landing him in many controversies for his more edgy and shock humor era past. One of the most notable controversies being a drawing he posted on Tumblr on May 1st, 2015, called Steven's Universe, where he drew Steven with stereotypical Jewish features like a long nose and all that. There's also the lesser known Steven... I can't say that one, but you get the picture. Not to mention a lot of the series containing many slurs, which I can't show you for obvious reasons. However, in the Brain Dump episode, wow, world's biggest house of cards, 2021 world record. Max directly addresses his controversial past and apologizes for a lot of the more offensive shock jock humor he was doing back then.
Tell me, silly bald man, do you have a dream? Well, that question kinda has a complicated answer. I used to want to be an artist, but I bungled that dream along the way somewhere. Irreparably. Burned too many bridges, squandered too many opportunities, made too many mistakes. Now I'm just trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life now that everything I used to want is no longer on the table. And to make ends meet, I humiliate myself on the internet for money. Which I suppose is all an elongated way of saying...
Tá, entendi.
Memphis, vem deitar com a mamãe, vem. Vamos.
I'm a YouTuber.
I'm sorry for all my problematic jokes. I'm sorry for everyone I've ever been obnoxious to because I was too socially to know how to interact the right way. I want to be a good person. I really do. But nobody ever taught me how because I never had any friends. And I'm sorry I said just now. I know I'm not supposed to say that word anymore, but it's hard. Because I've been saying it my whole life and I forget sometimes. I don't mean nothing by it. I just forget is all.
He says his focus from then on will be on more meaningful work that isn't just made to piss people off as a joke. I obviously have a lot of bias here because I've been a fan of Max since the Jerry days, but I'm glad he's moved on from blatantly edgy humor to focus on other projects, which honestly I still enjoy.
Já volto, vou guardar a cachaça. Voltamos.
Stone Toss, also known as Hans Christian Grabner, is a webcomic artist primarily focusing on political cartoons and comic strips in that sphere. The Stone Toss webcomic began in June of 2017 and quickly grew a fanbase from there, where he would later join Twitter and became enemy number one given the content of his comics. You see, Stone Toss's comics fall into two categories: edgy satire that's actually kind of funny sometimes, or alt-right leaning conspiracy theories, and offensive prejudice against women, trans people, gay people, minorities, etc. Many people call Stone Toss a neo-Nazi given the kind of material he draws, and it's not really hard to understand why. Stone Toss has responded to these claims, assuring that he's not a neo-Nazi because I have featured works from other artists, including multiple artists of color. Ah, I see. The old "I have tons of black friends" excuse. An absolute classic. He's also friends with another infamous online artist named Antunes, who I'll get into later. Stone Toss began selling some of his work as NFTs, which apparently sold out in 20 minutes, gaining him $2 million in the process, including the Among Us meme he was involved in that blew up around early 2021, and also one of George Floyd. In March of 2024, users managed to find Stone Toss's real identity and published it online, which included his real name and face. He of course then went to Elon Musk and got him to suspend all the accounts that doxed him. Honestly, while Stone Toss tells people he isn't a neo-Nazi or harbors any of those views, it becomes kind of apparent what his views are on certain topics by reading his comic. If he had just stuck to being funny and stopped with the right-wing stuff, he probably wouldn't have had people dox him. Hey, it's Reaching from the Future. I just want to pop in and say that I don't think anyone necessarily deserves to get doxed, but what I am saying is that Stone Toss did piss off a lot of people on purpose, so I'm not surprised that some people took it a little too far and decided to dox him. The Cal art style is a certain art style that is/was popular for cartoons around the 2010s. People started to notice that almost every currently airing cartoon had the same similar art style, having originated from the students of the California Institute of the Arts. This style was criticized heavily for looking too simplistic and being overused. For example, every character has a bean mouth, thin line work, round proportions, etc. This image here represents a lot of the talking points surrounding this debate. Things escalated quickly when a new show called Thundercats Roar debuted its trailer in 2019, which pissed a lot of people off with the art direction that the show took.
Hey there, everyone! My name's Lion-O, and I'm the star of a new show called Thundercats Roar. Wait, you don't know what a Thundercat is? Well, let's start small. I'm a Thundercat, and this is my magic slicing stick, Sword of Omens. Give me sight beyond sight!
Now look, I understand that people are getting sick and tired of this art style, and trust me, so am I. But it's not really the fault of the animators who work on these shows. A lot of the time, it's the higher-ups and executives who make these decisions because they think they know what's best for the IP. In other words, how can I turn this cartoon into a profit? Not to mention, we've had many fads in animation for certain art styles since forever. All the cartoons you see here are from the 80s with the exact same art style. These things come and go, and thankfully, it looks like the 2020s are ushering in a new era for animation and art styles.
Work today is broken. We're all working in too many disconnected apps, and it's killing team productivity. But for the first time, there's a platform that fixes it by combining everything you need. Projects, chat, and knowledge in one place. It's all powered by the world's most complete work, AI, so you can find answers from anywhere and get work done faster. Introducing ClickUp, the everything app for work.
Jesus Christ, where the f do I begin with this guy? Shadman, also known as Shaddai Perjan, is probably the most well-known and infamous artist on this list. In short, Shad makes
Se preparem pra desgraça completa.
NSFW drawings and posts them online for his very degenerate fanbase. He's become one of the most hated and controversial figures on the internet, and has sprung back into the limelight with the Ava Chris Tyson situation recently. Shadman in his early days attended art school in Switzerland, where he was later kicked out due to highly illegal material. Now if you've read your history books, you know this doesn't end well. This became a big part of Shad's identity later on in his online career. Eventually, he found success as an NSFW artist on Newgrounds in 2009, also dabbling into comics here and there. Shad's entire brand and persona was centered around being as humanely offensive and edgy as possible. drawing the most f***ed up and cruel things you can imagine. Instead of being blacklisted or taken down though, he actually grew to become insanely popular on the internet in the 2010s. It seems as though he was also friends with and collaborated with dozens of different YouTubers, artists, and animators. Somehow, this guy whose profile picture is based off of a Schutzstaffel SS officer managed to get all this attention and nobody seemed to care. Although most followed and interacted with Shad only because of his meme status, as the guy who drew f***ed up shit. Not many people knew of his controversies and followed him because he was just a big meme online. As he grew in notoriety, he started to release some of that highly illegal content on social media and his website. This was Shad's lolly art, which were drawings of presumably underage girls doing lewd acts. Now many of you might be saying, come on Richie, they're all fictional, they're not real, it's not hurting anyone. And sure, yes, they aren't real. But don't you think it's still at the very least super weird to enjoy and consume this? Yeah, they might be fictional characters, but you're still getting off to the idea of them being underage and the way they're physically drawn. Also, this argument gets completely tossed out the window when you realize Shad has drawn multiple real-life children in NSFW scenarios with full graphic detail. One of them was of Daphne Keene getting essayed, who was 12 at the time. He was later sent to cease and desist by her lawyers. Another was the 11-year-old YouTuber Lieutenant Corbus. This was after he said he regretted making this type of art and promised to stop. And
Bom, a próxima parte agora tô meio triste quando a gente pegar o contrato.
Possibly the worst of all was when Shad promised to draw Keemstar's 7-year-old daughter giving Trump a blowjob if he won the election. And of course, out of all, he decided to keep that promise. Keemstar unsurprisingly threatened to call the cops, and Shad only took it down because of the YouTuber Colossalus Crazy confronting him about it, who he had respect for. We also can't forget that time when he drew Ed Gould getting essayed by the Grim Reaper almost immediately after he died of cancer in 2012. By 2019, his antics had caught up with him as he revealed that he was being investigated by Hollywood and thankfully would stop with the lolly content. Not to mention all the drama and burned bridges because of his actions. Many of his friends had dropped him at this point and nobody wanted anything to do with them anymore. Later, on October 28th of 2021, Shad was arrested for assault and attempted murder with a deadly weapon in Los Angeles. It was also revealed that he was now a heroin addict and had sold most of his art supplies to fund his crippling addiction to drugs. This is probably what caused the incident, actually. Shad somehow was released from jail after this incident, and is currently roaming the streets of LA. Truly the Epstein of the internet. Racist Mario is an animated parody of Mario Kart made by the animation channel FlashGits, uploaded on August 5th, 2014. The animation follows Mario as he cleanses the racetrack of all the non-Nintendo characters, before moving on to everyone else who he sees as race traders. Get it? He's a racist because of, you know, racing. Anyway, Mario brutally maims, bludgeons, injures, and kills almost every character in the animation, until Kratos from God of War manages to put his head on a stick at the very end, winning the race. This animation was quite controversial, with a lot of people who didn't find the joke of, look, family-friendly thing is now adult and violent, to be funny. To be fair, the entire shtick of FlashGits is almost exactly that, so this is pretty on brand for them. There's also a lot of edgy jokes and a very sexual thumbnail mixed in with brutal violence, which didn't help it staying monetized for long. In fact, on April 23rd of 2017, YouTube directly told FlashGits to change the thumbnail or have the entire video be removed. So in protest, they decided to change Princess Peach from being topless to wearing a burqa. Watching this video again after 10 years kinda makes me realize how much my humor has changed, because I just sat there with a straight face wondering how I laughed my ass off at this in 2014. It's not even the edginess or shock value that I don't like. There's just no joke besides violence. Kyle, or Kylery, is an immensely popular Twitter artist from the Philippines that mainly draws popular memes with the inclusion of anime characters, or just humorous art pieces in general, sometimes towing the line between offensive and funny, as you're about to see. Kyle made their account in 2016, however their oldest post is from 2020. Maybe they just lurked around for 4 years and started to post randomly, or maybe there's some lost media and artworks that are now deleted. Anyway, as you can see from these images, their drawings started out in a very different style than what we're used to today. They're more rough around the edges and sketch-like, instead of fully rendered painting-like pieces. This would continue for a while until April of 2021, where we started to see a lot more anime content and the early stages of their current style. This new style blew up in popularity, and each post got thousands of likes. This would continue until a certain incident that happened on a very specific day. On January 27th, 2023, Kyle posted this piece which shows Anya from Spy X Family
Olha a merda aqui, ó. O cara vai explicar o que é isso, mas quem sabe
A
qual foi
field
a
trip,
merda que
being picked up and
isso
crying.
fez.
At first, everything seems pretty normal, until you start to look closer. Up here, we see an intentionally designed sign that reads, Arbeit macht frei, or in English, work sets you free. This sign appears at the gate of the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. It should also be noted that January 27th is also Holocaust Remembrance Day, so people didn't exactly take this one too well. The post went completely viral and people had many differing opinions. A lot of people didn't appreciate the Holocaust joke being made on Holocaust Remembrance Day, or the fact that somebody drew anime characters at a place where millions of people died. Others had a different take and suggested that Anya was sad because she was learning about what happened there, and there isn't really any joke to be made. Others pointed out that the children in the background had pickaxes, which implied that they were being sent to the camp to work. The post was deleted almost immediately after the backlash. However, they just kinda kept posting more art like nothing happened. In fact, that post propelled them into even higher amounts of fame. And Kyle, to this day, continues what they're known for. In 2020, John Bob was probably one of the fastest growing Twitter artists / animators out there, mainly known for a multitude of collaborations and networking he did with other artists online. John began his rise in 2019 from a choose your own adventure animated series he did, where his followers would pick out the next scene to be animated. This went viral and got him in contact with a ton of huge artists and animators that praised his style and talent. Most of John's work from then on was collaborations, by bringing artists together and making a friend group. It honestly felt like this guy was the main character and everybody was his friend. They were even on his banner. Also, pay attention to this guy here. He's more important down later in the iceberg. More people would join and meet others, almost like he had made his own networking page. John's personality was very wholesome, kind, and nice. At least, that's how he presented himself online. On his private account, John would make many questionable tweets that went from just odd to, oh my god, why are you sharing this? Including NSFW of him and his friends, probably without their consent. On August 18th, a mutual friend of John
Acho que é assim, né? É isso mesmo. Tô refazendo
named Get Good Nami was outed as being a groomer by a 15-year-old victim, sharing that Nami also had other victims he had successfully obtained photos of. Later, on August 31st, John decided to shoot himself in the foot and randomly confess he sexted a 15-year-old at the age of 18, even pestering her to do RP and draw NSFW. Except this wasn't completely out of the blue. John claims that he had immense guilt for his own actions after seeing Nami get called out, and decided to be righteous about his own misgivings, essentially confessing out of the goodness of his heart. This was a lie. He mentions in the initial tweet that the victim contacted him after a while to confront him about his behavior towards her. Leaked messages also show him panicking after she threatened to out him, deciding ultimately that he would do it first. This was probably done to garner sympathy and try to paint himself as a good person, as mentioned before. The backlash from this post was so strong that he pussied out and deactivated his account, but then decided to come back, apologize, then deactivate a second time, this time for good. All of the friends he had made were obviously disgusted by these actions and ceased all contact with him. All except the guy I mentioned earlier, who seemed a little too sympathetic towards him being outed. Obviously, none of his friends knew of his actions behind the scenes, and just thought he was a cool guy they could share their art with. John Bob has since not returned, thankfully, and I hope to God he never does. If you want more information, check out the video by Bedhead Bernie, linked below. William Borba is a professional illustrator and comic artist with years of experience in the industry. He also owns a DeviantArt account where he posts some of his illustrations and comics he does in his free time for fun. After seeing Zootopia in 2016, Borba was inspired to create a ton of Zootopia alternate universe.
O cara da piada de aborto do Zootopia. Tá ficando do caralho.
Comics in March of 2017, most of which see Judy and Nick in a relationship. Now, when you sit down and think about it, how exactly would interspecies breeding work within the context of this movie? In real life, the offspring usually can't reproduce themselves, so they die off and can't continue the hybrid legacy. We don't even see any interspecies couples or children in the movie, so it'll be a mystery as to how they're going to handle that in the sequel. Borba also asked this question and created a parody comic called I Will Survive, dealing with the ramifications of a bunny getting impregnated by a fox. The comic itself is available online, and I suggest you all go give it a read, because it's actually genuinely compelling and has a crazy twist in the sequels. Spoilers, but Judy wants an abortion and Nick wants to keep it, leading to a huge fight. Judy is rightfully scared about what's going to happen because in this universe, this has never happened before. Would it survive? Would it kill her? Would it go rabid and kill them both? Would they call them boxes or funnies? Really important questions to think about. Personally, here's my headcanon for the sake of Disney being family friendly. So, when the child is in the uterus, there's a 50-50 chance it's the species of either parent, similar to how the sex of the child is 50-50 as well. Meaning they can either have a fox that's a boy or girl, or a bunny that's a boy or a girl. Anyway, the comic ends up going viral, and this panel is probably the one you're most familiar with. Because of how it ends though, people started to speculate that Borba was injecting some sort of pro-life propaganda into the comic, even though he states multiple times that it should not be taken seriously and that it's all just for fun. This led to Borba creating a sequel where he continued the story further. Those, however, didn't go as viral as the first one did. He makes it abundantly clear that these are all jokes and don't contain any of his real-life opinions on these touchy subjects. I highly recommend reading them though because they're honestly really good. Squizzy, also known as Hyojin Choi, was an artist and animator most well known for her animations on YouTube and live streams on Twitch. Hyojin had been posting on Tumblr and Twitter for a while, but her career was boosted around mid-2016 when she began appearing in the videos of the large YouTuber Pyrocytical.
Hey, I have a joke. I have a joke.
Zaptie is homosexual.
What's the joke?
You're making me really pissed. Get it?
I hate you.
I'm in a
hate
mech.
you.
And I'm playing with
Hyojin.
Shiva and she's in a mech.
I have cancer now.
It turns out the both of them were dating, and Pyro began to feature her a lot more, giving Hyojin a platform to post her art and animations to a larger audience. In fact, this is where I found her and became a fan because of our shared sense of humor. Hyojin also collaborated with a bunch of other online creators at the time, including Quite, King Ani, Bluesdank, Dolan Dark, Slazo, Lord Bung, and Akai Nail War. The last two, in fact, were frequent guests on her stream and had their own successful careers. They even formed a podcast together called the Pubcast. Already though, Hyojin garnered some controversies that I'm surprised most people don't talk about. She was accused of bullying someone named Giddy and also several others, by inviting them to group chats just to mock them. Allegedly, she also accused Giddy of wanting to sleep with the YouTuber NoFuckers, and mocked the death of her cat. There's also the accusation of animal abuse, but that was proven to be mostly highly exaggerated, so I'm not going to include it. However, this did get people digging into her past, and they found some things. It turns out Hyojin had a secret NSFW account where she would draw porn of YouTubers and whatever else she felt like. One of these drawings was of a then 16-year-old Eileen Ninetails, drawn in 2017. Now, Hyojin may have only been around 18 at the time, which is only 2 years, but that's still not an excuse to draw an NSFW of someone underage, especially if you're legally recognized as an adult. There's also the heavy use of racial slurs in many videos you can find archived online, most of which come from when she was around 18 to 20. Now, I do remember her since then apologizing for saying these slurs on stream, but it didn't really help her reputation. Remember when I talked about a YouTuber she was friends with called Slazo? Well, around June of 2019, the artist Fizzypop made a call-out post accusing Slazo of abuse and essay against her while they were dating, where she was backed up by Hyojin and many of her friends because they trusted her. Long story short, it turns out the bulk of these allegations were either highly exaggerated or completely false, and Fizzypop ended up deleting her account. It was later revealed that Hyojin, Fizzypop, and many of the other accusers started a group chat discussing how they could meticulously take down Slazo and ruin him. After all this was exposed and they all started to feel the heat and pressure from angry fans on both sides, Hyojin made a suicide attempt. Thankfully, it was a failure, and she was placed in a mental ward for some time after being released. After the incident and the heat died down, Hyojin did eventually apologize to Slazo, as she was IRL friends with Fizzypop and placed more trust into her than somebody she only knew online. A lot of people felt as though this was insincere, but as 2019 came to a close, Hyojin kept chugging along doing live streams, animating and drawing. At this point, she had broken up with Pyrocynical and began dating another YouTuber named Punkduck. This would eventually lead to the complete destruction of her career, as on July 19th, 2022, Punkduck would make a statement on Twitter talking about his abuser, that abuser being Hyojin. He states that Hyojin had been abusive to him both mentally, emotionally, and physically. This lasted from when they were dating in 2019 to 2021. She would smash his head into a wall, threaten his life with a kitchen knife, and also confess to all of this in a Discord DM. Hyojin went silent for 2 weeks before making a public apology. At this point though, people were not having it, and were sick and tired of her constant controversies and not learning from her past. This was the final nail in the coffin for her, as she hasn't returned online ever since, leaving her YouTube channel to dip below 1 million subscribers. Let me tell you guys, when I said I was a fan, I mean I was a huge fan of hers, at least until 2021 where I stopped watching. At that point, I didn't know about or begrudgingly forgave her for some of the controversy she had because of my bias as a huge fan. Not this though. Reading those messages filled me with an unbridled amount of rage. Nobody deserves to go through what Punk Duck had to go through, and I really can't believe somebody would put up this facade of being a good person for so long. This entry is obviously very personal to me, but at the end of the day, you can't fully trust someone you're a fan of online. Be cautious and make sure to expose these people for who they truly are. Max Design Pro is a children's animator from Belarus with over 10 million subscribers on YouTube. His claim to fame comes from a series involving a family of monkeys in funny and relatable human situations. Some of the named characters include Max, Hope, Jimmy, Evil Max, and Nugget. Yes, there is lore to these animations. Sometimes there's full animations dedicated to just lore as well. His channel was created in 2020, although it seems like a lot of his old videos were removed, as the oldest upload on his channel is from 2022. So far this seems pretty innocent, right? Well, yeah, for the most part it is. Although a lot of criticism comes along Max's way due to the very nature of slop content aimed at children. A lot of people, especially parents, are very concerned with YouTube Kids content and what exactly they're watching and learning. It's been a problem for a while, especially with the ElsaGate situation a few years back. The meta changes every few years to see who can grab the most attention the longest. Let's be honest here, Max Design Pro's animations do fall into the category of brain rot slop, with wacky sound effects and all that every second to keep the 6-year-old iPad kid's attention before they move on to something else. Every short begs the viewer to click on the like button and subscribe, or else the nugget dies or something. I can see how people think it's a little predatory towards kids' attention. I gotta be honest though, I don't really think this is the worst thing a kid could be watching. Is it stupid and confusing? Yeah. But I'm a grown man. Of course I wouldn't understand what the kids are into nowadays. From what I've seen though, it's extremely tame and doesn't try to inject weird fetishes or sexualization into the videos, so that's a relief at least. What did surprise me though, is that Max has a huge fan base of teenagers and young adults who seem to unironically love this series meant for toddlers. There's hundreds of pieces of fan art, accounts dedicated to certain characters, layers of drama from within. It's absolute insanity. I don't know how or why it's a thing, but it's not my business, so I'm just gonna drop it. I think this actually might be one of the most tame things on the iceberg, so good for him.
¿Tienes una idea de negocio y quieres llevarla al mundo online? Con GoDaddy, dar el salto es muy fácil. Te ofrecemos herramientas muy intuitivas y fáciles de usar para acompañarte a cada paso. Y ahora, con GoDaddy Airo, puedes construir tu negocio con la ayuda de la inteligencia artificial. Da el salto online.
Oh!
Chibble Dipple, otherwise known as Fractal County, is an artist, developer, and animator whose reputation has fallen into the gutter because of misinformation, trolling, and pissing off the wrong people. Chip's initial start came from animations he did on his YouTube channel, which went viral and propelled him into the limelight of internet fame. One of them was Carl the Brain Cell, made in 2018, which was an animated Oni Plays bit and where I initially found him. In November of 2019, Chip, Wilbur Soot, and Josh 820 would create SMP Earth, inspired by SMP Live created by Call Me Carson. SMP Earth would actually continue until April of 2020. Now, given the nature of Minecraft YouTuber fans, things got crazy really quickly. The mega fans, also known as stans, of YouTubers like Dream and George Not Found as examples, would be parasocially obsessed with these people and worship them almost as if they were gods. This isn't too dissimilar to crazy obsessed fans of celebrities like Taylor Swift and most K-pop groups. Because of his association with these YouTubers, all eyes were now on Chip, who is a co-founder. Long story short, Chip's posting habits on Twitter pissed off a lot of these stans. However, the posts in question were either really obvious jokes or mild trolling. He'd be bombarded with hate messages and death threats for anything he posted. However, Chip's attitude towards this was very different than most. The average person would stop posting what they wanted and succumb to the hate mob attacking them. Chip took a different approach, however. He doubled down and kept posting what he felt like. Sometimes it'd be comics about things he thought were annoying, sometimes mocking people for being dumb, or just making people mad on purpose because to him it was funny. Hey, remember John Bob from last video? Well, he also included Chip in some animations before the allegations, without permission of course, but it was good for growth so he let it slide, as did many other creators. About a year after the allegations hit, Chip would make a very obviously satirical fan cam of John Bob, which burned a lot of bridges with any major supporters he might have had. Not many people would want to associate with him after this, causing his circle to grow smaller. At this point, Chip was running out of allies to actually vouch or support him if something serious did happen. And something did actually happen. It turns out on multiple occasions, some anonymous accounts posed as Chip's fans and sent horrible images of gore and NSFW to people, pretending like they were sent by him to harass his detractors. The accounts mostly admitted to being neutral parties that wanted to cause chaos for fun, but a lot of people didn't believe this and thought Chip had sent them. The next incident would involve poop. Stay with me. Someone who talked to Chip would make a post calling him out for sending them images of his poop, claiming that he legitimately took a shit in his own hands and then took a picture. The image being of Chip's own poop and being taken by him were false, as it was connected to a now deleted account who actually did do that. However, yes, Chip did send a picture of poop, not his own poop mind you, to this person. What makes it worse is that this person was 17 going on 18 in a few weeks. Why did he do this? According to him, he thought the person was annoying and thought it was funny. I'm gonna be honest, probably not the best idea to send poop photos to people, especially when you don't know them that well, but f it, what do I know? Now, while this in my eyes and many other people's eyes was a shitty, thing to do, others went as far as to call it a sex crime against a minor. Now we enter the Pipka arc of this segment, where Chip posted a meme including the artist Pipka, causing them to respond saying that they don't want anything to do with him. This would culminate into Chip and his fans making Pipka Gassy edits, alongside the character Incredible Gassy, and his own character Sergeant Braphog.
Ficou do caralho.
Jesus f***ing Christ, what am I reading? There was also the Pipka game that Chip would create, which was a platformer involving their character becoming morbidly obese and fighting pre-diet Nikocado avocado. Pipka and Chip's beef would last for a while, where Chip would make fun of them, Pipka would always retaliate, Chip finds it funny, and repeat. This caused a vicious cycle of mockery with hundreds of tweets throughout a few months. The launch website for the Pipka game would go live in March of 2023. However, something was wrong. It turns out Chip fucked up and a lot of personal information, including his real name, address, and phone number, were found in the source code. Chip would then get doxxed and have dozens of people call his personal phone. Except not really. Turns out the whole thing was a huge stunt and totally fabricated. All the information was fake and the phone number was a burner recording all the messages sent. These would be placed into the game as voice lines, and the stunt was created to weed out all the people who celebrated or posted the doxing. After all this, Chip made a document debunking all the claims made against him, like the poop, stalking, harassment, and pedo allegations. Although most people who hated him didn't care, their minds were made up. In fact, not long after, Chip would get doxed for real this time. The doxer is going as far as to contact his family. Fearing for his own safety, he deactivated his account temporarily. Chip has been back for a while now, and from what I've seen, he hasn't got into any major drama since the Pipka arc. Although in September, there was that time he changed his name and profile picture to Smart Schoolboy 9 as a joke, which people didn't like. Funnily enough, because Twitter is Twitter, he couldn't change his profile picture back and was stuck as Smart Schoolboy 9 for a while. He's been working on developing some games for the most part and stayed out of major trouble since the actual doxing happened. He still posts what he feels like, but most have either blocked him or don't care anymore. Probably the best, since becoming public enemy #1 on Twitter is always a bad idea, just like what happened to Stone Toss. Obviously, despite posting a lot of rage bait and making fun of people who may or may not have deserved it, I don't condone doxing, and it definitely should not have happened. Most of the information was gathered from this Turkey Tom video, by the way, so if you want details and a more thorough analysis, then go watch that. At the very least though, when Chip saw the previous video I made, he at least understood how an iceberg chart worked, unlike the next guy we're going to be talking about. Anton Severtnik, otherwise known as Antunes, is an Estonian animator and comic artist with over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Anton started his online career around 2014, but he's been drawing ever since he was a kid. Side note, by the way, his lore is actually really insane from what I'm reading. Dude was kidnapped by his dad when he was 3 and lived in West Ukraine until his mom tracked him down with the police and took custody of him. There's a lot more about his childhood and past before YouTube you could have read on his blog made in 2015, although it seems like this was taken down, so use the Wikitubia page about him instead. To summarize, Anton was a bit of a huge loner in high school and middle school, struggling with grades and only finding solace in art and video games for a while. It's actually kind of sad to see how much he struggled in his youth. On YouTube, he's most well known for his Deathbed series that imagines cartoon characters hypothetically living out their last day, usually a metaphor for that franchise dying. The series has been going on since 2017 and is immensely popular, garnering hundreds of millions of views per video. The popularity of this series and many others would launch his career as a successful animator for most of the 2010s. However, in 2020, Daft Pina, everybody's favorite critic, made a video about Anton, calling him out for his tracing and some animations he did. The tracing was done without permission and mostly went uncredited. His response was that the tracing was okay because other people do it as well, according to him. Also arguing that what he did was transformative, adding his own style and flair over the traced frames of animation.
The example of what I used, the one that got most attention, was an image of a certain comic creator on the blue pill side. I traced that as the base for the model in the mock-up trailer, but after that all the animation bits, like his attacks, were original. The only reason I traced one image was to make sure their representation looked recognizable, and once I got it down, I made the rest of the work from scratch.
Now, is tracing the end-all be-all for someone? Not really. It's pretty taboo in the art community, although it can be used as a learning tool for your own growth, as long as you're not claiming a traced image as your own work. Still, not a good thing to do in general, because it is stealing from others. Next, we move on to all the Twitter drama he had with his comics and Puppy Chan. Anton in 2020 would make highly offensive and edgy comics to get a rise out of people. He pretty much became a diet version of Stone Toss with jokes that aren't even original and lack any sort of punchline or comedy that Stone Toss has. Suffice to say, people did not like these comics and criticized him heavily for this. This leads into his beef with Puppy Chan, which lasted for a while. Long story short, Puppy Chan and Anton had a public argument about the concept of being transgender and about autism. This was a very long battle of tweets, DMs, comics, and harassment from fans on both sides, which culminated into Anton putting Puppy Chan's character into a game he was working on, where their special attack was spurting period blood from their crotch. Keep in mind, Puppy Chan was 17 at the time, which made this look incredibly bad for his side. And before anyone says anything, I will get to Puppy Chan and all the things they did later. This is just about Anton for now. After being confronted, Anton and Puppy Chan had a private talk in DMs and decided to squash the beef and let the drama finally end. Except not really. Leaked DMs on Discord show Anton claiming this was a non-aggressive act, where he would strike again once they were 18. Not to mention all the times he mentions using them for his own gain in The War with the Left. Jesus, I don't think I've seen a man more perpetually stuck in his 2016 anti-SJW phase than Anton. In late March of 2021, he would commission Butch Hartman to draw his character Mr. Freaks holding up a white flag that was burning. The version he publicly posted though showed the transgender flag, not a white one. It turns out Anton colored in the white flag with transgender colors to make it seem like Hartman drew something hateful as an April Fool's joke. Hartman already doesn't have a good reputation online and has done some shady things, but many agreed that slandering him like this, even for a joke, was going a little too far. In 2022, he would make a huge video cataloging all of the drama he'd gotten into over the years, and try to debunk the claims made by multiple commentary channels. Two of those channels being Just Stop and Harley TBS, where it should be noted that Anton drew them with their pants down getting spanked, both of whom were around 17. Yet again, not a good look, even if his intentions were not sexual and more for comedic relief like he claims in the video.
As you can clearly see, the pants fall off in one shot, but we're back in the next one when spanking begins, which means Just Stop has clearly missed the point of the gag, or at least pretended that he missed it. A creepy type setup of a situation like this, but leads to good old-fashioned child discipline instead, doesn't mean anything sexual at all. Not to mention it's a cartoon avatar, with freaking 4 fingers instead of 5, and I'm honestly surprised that Just Stop lost his marbles when he saw it.
This thing is over 2 hours long, by the way, and goes into detail about everything that's happened since 2020. I've watched most of it, and I'll admit, there are a lot of good points he makes about his detractors and whatnot, but there's also a lot of really bad faith misinterpretations and illogical arguments that many people, including myself, don't agree with. I can't name them all and dissect this for time reasons, but there's a lot of people who have talked about it online. I'm also 90% sure he frantically searches up his name online almost every day because he found my video and said this on Twitter, even though, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is sorted from most known entries to lesser known ones. You're probably watching this right now, actually. Hi, Anton. Maybe you should spend more time focusing on your job and not getting into beef with teenagers on the internet as a 36-year-old man. James Bear, also known as Doodle Jam, was an animator and YouTuber well known for his short comedic animations, starring usually himself and his ex Clarissa. James created his account back in 2013, but it would take him a full year to upload his first few animations. Those animations being a heavily inspired series called Jam World, and by heavily inspired, I mean it's almost identical to Ed's World. Eventually, he'd move on to regular parodies and animations for YouTubers like Pyrocynical for a while. He wouldn't get his big break until around 2019 when the No Nut November trend was in full swing. Most of these starred Clarissa in very revealing clothing, which is probably the reason for the boost in fame. Noticing this, James decided to double down on sexualizing Clarissa in every animation, which propelled him into even higher amounts of fame. On the surface, everything seemed okay, but James would not be in this video if the story ended here. Aaron Preston is the author of a 182-page document called The Truth Behind James Bear, detailing messages that James had sent to him and a huge confession that he made. In February of 2016, James confessed to Aaron that in 2013, he essayed his own sister who was 9 years old at the time. What makes things worse is that he kept doing this to her for years, only stopping around 2016. James at the time was a teenager, so he very much knew what he was doing was deplorable, but it didn't stop him. He blames what he did on depression and tries to garner sympathy from Aaron, like he's the victim in this whole thing. I'm gonna be honest, besides this very important piece of information, the rest of the document is an absolute train wreck. It's filled with nonsensical ramblings and petty grievances that don't matter. Like, there's a section where he calls out James for his big hand and demon fetish. Unfortunately, because of how much bullshit there is in this document, it flew under the radar when it was published back in July of 2018. Someone actually sent this document to me when it was published back then, and I can't believe it took until 2022 for people to realize what he'd done. In March of 2022, the user Lalo Does Art exposed James and the document to a large audience of people, which got the ball rolling for more people to find out about what he did. James's earlier response was also found, which was made back in 2020. If you're wondering, it's complete horseshit. He lies and says it only happened once, which directly contradicts what he told Aaron in private. He also says it was okay because he was a minor at the time and it was consensual.
Whatever I said in the leaked messages was fabricated, and I knew that this person would leak these messages one day with bad intentions. However, as much as I don't want to talk about my past, what happened back then was an isolated issue. It only happened once when I was a minor. It was already dealt with. Those who are involved are fine and made amends. I am not a threat to anyone, and the other claims are not true. This situation is old news, and despite what you think about all of this, no one has any right to judge my past.
This was picked apart by dozens of commentary YouTubers and destroyed his reputation online. He would make several responses on Twitter and YouTube, all of them filled with lies, contradictions, downplaying the situation, acting as the victim, etc. Even he would realize how bad they all were and deleted most of them. In September of 2023, James's alleged sister would come forward with her side of the story. Not only did James lie about everything in his responses, but he also lied in his confession. It's even worse than what he described. She alleges that he essayed her from 2013 all the way up until 2020. That is 7 full years of abuse and assault against his little sister. The backlash would cause James to spiral out of control and lose his mind. Not helping was the fact that Clarissa had obviously dumped him by this point. In February of 2024, A post would be made calling out James for harassing his now ex Clarissa and many of her friends out of jealousy and spite because she broke up with him. In the Aaron Preston document, you can see that the way James communicates is very creepy, childish, and petty. Nothing has changed since then, as the messages James was sending to Clarissa and her friends were downright stalker-like and deranged. He'd make multiple accounts to harass her after getting blocked, tried to reach her through her friends that were sick of his bullshit, and he'd make up scenarios in his head to accuse people of in DMs. Those made up scenarios being that Clarissa was cheating on him with almost everyone she was friends with, and that she abused him. You can see this in many drawings he made where he depicts Clarissa as a cheating, emotionally abusive, and terrible person, while he's a caring, loving boyfriend that gets stomped on for no reason. These images are genuinely psychotic, by the way. This is followed by an account he definitely made that pretended to be Clarissa and talked about how much she loved cheating on James, exposing DMs between Clarissa and another person. His mind has been so rotted by porn that he constantly refers to himself as getting NTR'd, making dozens of posts like this. This is not the only account, by the way. There's another one that frantically tries to defend James. Another response would be made on July 8th of 2024, this time featuring his sister. Let me tell you, this one is really distressing. His sister sounds like she's being held at gunpoint to read a pre-made script defending James and saying she lied about everything for money.
This is Alicia speaking, or in other words, this is his sister speaking, and what my brother James is saying is true. First, I would like to give my deepest apology to everyone for spreading misinformation about my brother and about my own family. Truth be told, that I only came forward because I was only upset and my reasons for being upset were petty and I had a falling out with a friend. People who claimed they had their best interests never really cared, which resulted in me giving them very personal information and having the police come over to our family's house yet again. My actions were completely reckless and I didn't mean to put my family in danger like that. For years, I was always aware about the drama online towards my brother, and admittedly, I knew from the beginning that he was innocent, and unfortunately, I adopted this false history that the internet made about us, and it felt like I had more to gain by simply accepting it.
Pretty much everyone doubts this was genuine, as it makes no sense for her to go back on all the accusations unless James was threatening her, which it sounds like he is. Allegedly, James's family relies on the ad revenue from his channel for income, so it's likely that her whole family was complicit in the abuse and silenced her story for James's YouTube career. On July 18th, James would make another response on Twitter with a massive thread trying to debunk everything. It starts off by disproving the claims of using an AI-generated clone of his sister's voice, and her allegedly using donation funds to get a new PC. However, now he's claiming that the assault never even happened in the first place, and downplays it as awkward cuddling. He ends the thread saying he's moving on and wants to leave behind this drama, never being heard from since. This guy is genuinely one of the most deplorable and disgusting YouTubers I've ever had the displeasure of enjoying at one point in my life. I'm honestly surprised most people don't know about him or what he did because this is genuinely awful. I hope his sister can one day leave this horrible family and find peace. There's many more details and incidents that you can find in this video made by the YouTuber Salty. Schmorky, also known as Dave Kelly, was a prominent animator for the Something Awful forums and frequent collaborator with major networks like Adult Swim. Dave's early life was pretty awful. After graduating college in 2000, they struggled to find work as an animator and were abused by the people they had to live with for years. They did commission work for a while and made some short comedic animations for the website somethingawful.com. In 2004, a convention for Something Awful users would be created called GoonCon 2004. The past was truly a different time. The owner of the site, Richard Lotex Kianka, would finally get to meet Dave, being a huge fan of their work. This is where Dave would be given the opportunity to work for Something Awful as a full-time animator, and they soon became close friends. In 2008, Dave would create a Smurfs knockoff called Clurfs, which would represent themselves and be a staple in their comics and work for a long time. Unfortunately, Something Awful wasn't doing great for relevancy online, as YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter were kicking ass in numbers and growth. Around 2013 is where Richard and Dave decided to create a YouTube channel called Gaming Garbage, similar to the premise of AVGN. Things went well for a while actually. While the YouTube channel was doing okay in numbers, Dave was getting commissioned by networks like Adult Swim and allegedly even Nickelodeon at some point. Yes, they're the animator behind this bumper you might have seen floating around, as well as many others. 2016 is where things would ultimately crash and burn for Dave, as within the span of a few months, there would be dozens of controversies coming their way. First and foremost, Dave was revealed to be an abuser and overall shitty partner to their girlfriend Amanda. Amanda was diagnosed with schizoaffective and bipolar disorder, in which she would need medication to function properly. In a 9-minute video you can find on YouTube, Dave secretly records audio of Amanda freaking out, yelling, screaming, ranting, and crying.
I'll just do what you want. What do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want. What do you want from me? Stop screaming and pretending. I'm not pretending! What do you want from me? What? What do you want from me?
With that in context, it turns out Dave hid her medication and forced her to stop taking them, essentially coaxing her into a mental breakdown that they recorded and posted online for sympathy. If you're wondering why Dave sounds like that, by the way, it's because they started really getting into gender identity and wanted a more androgynous presenting character. This includes a wig, makeup, and strange nasally voice they're putting on. I don't think this really matters in the grand scheme of things, I just want to explain why they look and sound different. Around this time, they were also kicked off of Gaming Garbage after a falling out with Richard, also being banned from Something Awful for that recording that they posted. After breaking up some time later, Amanda would provide the website Kiwi Farms with a lot of information regarding Dave's private life. Dave, to the surprise of nobody, was into urine, scat, and diapers. Rumors about this had circulated for years now, but this was the confirmation, even revealing that they wanted Amanda to change their full diaper while being spoken to like a baby, on top of being confirmed to be a manipulator, abuser, and awful person in general. Worst of all though, a user named Carefully would reveal dozens of pages of chat logs between them and Dave from 2014. These chat logs were incredibly sexual RP that included incest, scat, urine, diapers, and anything else you can imagine. Thankfully, it seems like Carefully was over 18 during these messages, but my god, some of these are really hard to read, especially since Dave loves pretending to be a child during most of the RP. Another person then joined in on this called Soliloquy. They revealed that Dave tried to hire them as a voice actor in 2007, but the lines that Dave wanted them to read involved pretending to be an underage girl who was really into scat, urine, and diapers. Now you might be asking what these line reads were for. Well, this part gets crazy. Soliloquy's lines were meant to be used on an account called Peaches the Puppy on Fur Affinity. Not only that, but it turns out the Peaches the Puppy account was also connected to another one called Sandy Pants, who seemed to be an underage girl coincidentally also into scat, urine, and diapers. He was pretending to be an underage girl who was into these fetishes on 2 separate accounts, going as far as to hire voice actors to play into this weird roleplay fantasy. After the uproar this caused on Kiwi Farms, Dave left one final comment on their Tumblr, checked into a loony bin, and hasn't been heard from in over 7 years. Since then, many have theorized that Dave went under a new name, that name being Stone Toss. Obviously not true with the recent information, but a fun theory for the time. Since then, Amanda seems to be doing okay and looks back on this era with amusement, although sadly, Richard Lotex Kianka would commit suicide on November 9th, 2021. A sad ending to an already tragic story. Most of the information I learned came from this video by Magic Mush, by the way. Watch it for more details. So that's the story as many people know it. However, as I did further research, I found a Tumblr blog claiming to debunk some major allegations against Dave. I'm gonna read some of the excerpts and summarize the main points. To recap what's going on one more time, sometime shortly before the New Year's, it was claimed that Schmorky supposedly had been having sexual chats with a 16-year-old on Skype, who came forward under the username Carefully on Kiwi Farms. These interactions involved diaper scat roleplay, and shortly after these claims were made, Schmorky attempted suicide. On January 2nd, Carefully released Skype logs on Kiwi Farms, and Schmorky's ex-fiancée Amanda also began to make accusations against him, ranging from his psychological abuse of her to him having alternate personas online. He attempted suicide again on the 6th. The main accusation is that Schmorky was involved in leaked sexual roleplay with a minor. This has already been denied by Carefully herself. The problem is, she waited over a week and a half before making this clear, long after the story had made its way around, and most people were already under the impression that she was 16 at the time when she added him on Skype. She was not. Amanda said a lot of things, going from saying Schmorky's room is covered in piss-soaked diapers, to claiming his boss Lotax rapes his own kids. If I were to go through every single contradiction she's made, this post would be even more stupidly long than it already is. So we'll focus on the more serious ones. Amanda claims that Schmorky prevented her from taking the medication she needed to cope with her schizophrenia. Lotax has already backed her up on this, saying that Schmorky for whatever reason was anti-medicine and anti-therapy. It's apparent from the logs that Amanda wasn't as unstable in the past as she is now, and the fact that he would repeatedly turn the cops away from dealing with her is an obvious sign of an abusive relationship. From the Skype conversations that she leaked herself, it's very clear that Schmorky was not in the slightest anti-medicine or anti-therapy. It's also pretty well known that Amanda was paranoid about continuing to take her medication on her own. This is me now cutting in, by the way. I gotta be honest, just because Dave says they're not anti-medication or anti-therapy in some Skype chat logs, it doesn't necessarily mean it's definitive proof that they're innocent in this case. It's very easy to just say one thing and not actually mean it with your actions. However, it is also totally possible that Amanda misplaced the medication or something, and believed that Dave hid them from her in a state of paranoia and delusion. It's been made clear that she makes a lot of baseless and insane accusations sometimes because of her condition. So in general, I guess I'd say take this one with a grain of salt. The third claim is that according to Amanda, Schmorky has two alternate personas, Sandy Pants and Peaches the Puppy. Another user on Kiwi Farms with the username Soliloqueef claims to have proof that Schmorky asked her to do voice work for Peaches the Puppy back in 2007, so that he could post it on the Peaches the Puppy for Affinity, thus disguising himself with a more feminine voice. This one is kind of weird, but it's still something Lotax seems to agree with. A mod on Kiwi Farms who knew a friend of Sandy Pants attempted to contact them, and their friend's testimony cast doubt on the idea of Schmorky being her. There's also the fact that Sandy Pants posted a statement on her Ink Bunny sometime around the 10th of January, at a point where Schmorky was still being held for a second attempted suicide 4 days earlier, and would have had to have known about these allegations being made against him on some random Kiwi Farms forum. That's also assuming that while he was being held, he had access to unmonitored internet in the first place. So Schmorky and some other adults had diaper RP. Then the other person leaked the Skype log and acted like she was underage at the time. She waited a week before she said she wasn't. Some more comments on her Skype also implied that she might have been dishonest as to how old she was in the past. Schmorky's ex-fiance says that Schmorky was an aggressive abuser, but then releases chat logs that completely contradict a majority of her claims. Also, some stuff about Sandy Pants happened that doesn't really have much relevance, other than that it would possibly point to foul play on Amanda and Carefully's parts. That's about it. This definitely gives me a new perspective on this whole situation, and I'm really surprised a lot of people don't talk about it. From what I'm seeing, there's a good amount of proof towards Dave's innocence, but like I said, some of this evidence is very circumstantial and shaky. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this, given that the damage is done and this whole thing is very old. James William Barkley III, also known as Animated James, was an artist, animator, voice actor, and musician, mostly known for his parodies and original series he created on his YouTube channel. James got his start on Newgrounds in 2008, most of his animations involving Sonic and then eventually MLP, because of course they did. Almost every animator and artist around this time seemed to really be into either Sonic, MLP, or both. These videos were honestly very impressive and well animated for a teenager. James had an immense amount of talent when it came to almost anything creative. That showed in his numbers. These videos got tons of views, which made him start a YouTube channel in 2011. During this era, we saw huge projects like Seniors and C Students, which were some of my favorite animations by him. Although, there was a certain incident in 2014, which caused a lot of mental health problems for him and was most likely the catalyst for what happens next. In May of 2014, someone on 4chan linked a Tumblr page called Sonic Girls, which contained webcomics of girls from the Sonic series, farting and defecating, sometimes on each other. Immediately, somebody clocked this art style as being very similar to Animated James. When confronted, he vehemently denied the allegations. And then mysteriously, the Tumblr page was deleted right after. From this very poor move, there was no denying it. Animated James had a fart fetish. This caused great bouts of depression as he was mocked and made fun of all over the internet for this. Even Zach Hadel of Psychic Pebbles fame and Spaz Kid got in a Skype call with him, only to make fart noises and ask if it turned him on. Because of this incident, James would have massive trust issues, and became very standoffish. The mockery he received for this really affected him, and it caused a huge shift in who he was as a person. Now, like I said in the first video, I think having fetishes like this is fine, as long as you're not hurting anyone. And as funny and embarrassing as this might have been, I think he deserves to be called out for more of the serious allegations against him, which I'm going to talk about now. Also in 2014, he began dating an artist named Toxic Soul 77 online, also known as Michaela Groves. The problem being, James was around 20, while Michaela was only 17. Many accused him of grooming and which was amplified even more when James tried to justify it by quoting the age of consent laws in New York where he lived. They would eventually break up near the end of 2015 because of the accusations against him. Funnily enough, James Bear, who I talked about earlier, tried going after Michaela after this happened, obviously getting rejected. Thank God. Despite this, his fame got him invited to several conventions in the mid-2010s, most of which being MLP related. Although his behavior at BronyCon 2015 would cause some controversy and scrutiny under his name. James, for some reason, decided to heckle other guest speakers at a panel because to him they weren't funny enough.
To leave a panel hosted by someone who I consider to be a close friend. So what I do is I yell out, "We're not friends anymore," and then I walk out.
And also made essay jokes directly to the face of an acquaintance, ripping on their artwork as well. When this person got mad at them and called him out on Twitter, James at first went, "Heh, ever heard of a thing called dark humor, libtard? Before making a proper apology. Those guest speakers would later call him out for the heckling, causing even more controversy. After some time, James made a video calling out the brony community for being easily butthurt and not being able to take jokes or criticism. Hearing the news about James's behavior, BronyCon banned him from speaking at any more events. While he wasn't banned from outright attending, this did cause a rift between the brony community and himself, now having a reputation for being a huge dick. Going into the second half of the 2010s, James's mental health would continue to spiral. He publicly revealed that at this time he was going through severe depression and social anxiety, which greatly affected his motivation to do YouTube. That's when he dropped arguably the greatest animation he's ever made, and my personal favorite, Creative Types. Despite what he did, I really love this animation. The song is amazing, everything is so polished and nice looking, the storyline is great, I just think it's his best work. His audience and even the people who mocked him agreed. It garnered universal praise and got him back into the swing of things on YouTube. Although, after a few more animations, this wouldn't last long. On July 16th, 2018, James would release his final video, which announced the discontinuing of the channel and quitting the internet to focus on his mental health. He reasoned that making videos and focusing on animation gave him no time to fix his problems on the inside, causing a lot of drama, which I mentioned before. James then left the internet with no trace. About a year later, on August 19th, 2019, the voice actress for Penny from C Students made a statement. She had left C Students because James had wanted her to do a lot of sexually explicit material that she wasn't comfortable with for the show. Not only that, but James actively pursued her romantically and even offered to fly out to where she lived. She was also 17, and James, according to the timeline, was already dating Michaela. So that's 2 minors he was lusting over at the same time. When she left the show, James became so angry that he allegedly encouraged his fanbase to harass her. 4 years later, James would actually return after going silent. He acknowledges that he deserved all the criticism that went his way back then, especially him dating a 17-year-old at 20. All the burned bridges, ruined relationships, bad behavior, and being mocked were all his fault according to him. In a Daft Pina interview later that year, he revealed that he went homeless in 2020, making it his lowest point both physically and mentally.
I became homeless right around the start of the COVID pandemic when everyone is supposed to be in their homes as much as possible. So that sort of gave me this perspective of, I guess this is how I go. Like, I guess this is just it. While I did have sort of a dismal outlook in that regard, being homeless definitely helped me put my priorities in order, and like, despite it being the most difficult external time in my life, internally, I was a lot more at peace. I was a lot more just accepting of who I am, who I was, and just everything about me. So while it was difficult, I don't think it was anything that I don't deserve. I definitely believe that I got everything I had coming to me in that regard.
Thankfully, he managed to recover because of the people around him, planning on going to therapy and taking medication. Surprisingly, he's still active under a new name, drawing NSFW commissions and doing what he feels like. He says he's not asking for forgiveness and understands if people still hate him. He just wants to move past his old persona and move on to doing what he wants. Despite this, there is a conspiracy theory surrounding an account named Neurotic. This channel popped up right after James retired, and one of these videos has a very distinct animated James style. Their final tweet also makes it seem like James was trying to make animations under a new name, before deciding it wasn't a good idea. It's still unconfirmed if this was really James or not, but a lot of people seem to think it is. You know, as much as I loved James's content back then and want to forgive him for his past grievances, him dating and lusting after 2 minors is where I draw the line. I do hope he's going to be alright mentally, but I cannot support him at all in good faith. Yet again, more details can be found in this Turkey Tom video. Danny, also known as Lord Bung, was an animator and artist who created an immensely popular original series on YouTube based on the SCP Foundation. If you don't know what the SCP Foundation is, it's a fictional wiki-based collaborative writing project where people write entries and stories about things like anomalies, entities, and objects. It's very popular online, and even inspired some books and video games. Around 2016 is where Danny would start their online career with a series called Bung Chronicles. These were actually more akin to animated rant/commentary videos, discussing topics like vaccines, crystals, and astrology in the form of debunking. It's actually extremely impressive how long and well written these videos are, feeling like a network produced TV show instead of one person creating it. Danny had already showed the internet that they had a lot of talent to create high quality productions, and that showed in their next series called Confinement.
Eu tô nessa de entrar em sites estranhos que tem um design antigo ou zoado mesmo e me falaram aqui, entra no site do Vaticano. Mano, olha esse site, pelo amor de Deus, realmente, né? Pelo menos tá em português. Você pode escolher aqui várias línguas do mundo, até em latim. Ah, vamos, a gente vai ter que navegar em latim, com certeza. Dorime. Eita, é outro site, completamente diferente. Sumi Pontifices. Caralho, que site horrível, mano. Isso foi feito em 1948 e ficou assim até hoje. Franciscus PP, vamos ver aqui a página do Francisco PP. Tem a foto do Papa Francisco. É assim que fala latim, tá? Cara, vamos voltar pro português, que isso aqui nem eles não atualizam o site em latim, porque eles sabem que ninguém vai entrar. Português, se entrar no francês, fica diferente o site? Não, ó. O site original tem nas línguas originais. E daí você pode escolher aqui no menu todos os papas, tá? O Francisco aqui, se eu clicar no... Ah, tá. Por que o Francisco tá mais aceso? Ele foi mais... Ah, não, porque ele tá na ativa, né? Por isso que ele tá aceso. Vamos ver aqui um papa... Mano, tem todos os papas desde o começo lá. O primeiro papa foi Pedro. Um cara chamado Pedro. Depois teve o Evaristo, o apresentador. Pedro, primeiro papa da Igreja Católica. Fim do pontificado no ano de 64. Nasceu em Betsaiada, na Galileia. Ainda existe essa cidade, Betsaiada? Olha como é que tá hoje em dia, velho. Só umas pedras jogadas. Lugar amaldiçoado por Jesus. Foi onde nasceu o Papa, velho. Jesus fez isso. Não acredito. Mas é o Pedro apóstrofe do Jesus? Não, né? Acho que é qualquer Pedro aí que virou Papa. Pio VII ou Pio VI. Tem umas escolas aí com o nome de Papa Pio, né? Leão... Ah, tinha uma escola aqui em Santos, Leão 13. Faliu. Que era uma escola que todo mundo que tava pra repetir de ano ia pra essa escola. Engraçado, mano. Tem o Bento João Paulo II. João Paulo I. Nossa, eu nem lembro desse João Paulo I aqui. Ele tá desenhado, né? Não tá tipo a foto dele real. Tem o calendário aqui, ó. Vamos ver pra março o que a gente vai ter. Legal que os nomes dos dias estão em italiano, né? Mas tudo bem. Ontem teve início dos exercícios espirituais do Santo Padre da Cúria Romana. Boletim da sala de imprensa. Cada lugar que você... Eita, peraí. Daí tem o site Vatican News. Esse é mais moderninho. Ele parece tipo um CNN da vida. Até as cores, né? Por que os caras fizeram o site assim, Vatican News? Doideira. Arquivo fotográfico, você vai entrando, a língua vai ficando maluca. Beleza, daí é outro site, que é o Vatican Media. Esse é azul. E é um pouco mais moderno também, né? E bota um pouco nisso, porque não é muito não. Ó, aqui em homenagem ao padre do balão, né? Coitado. Até hoje procurando ele. Que isso aqui, mano? Convenção dos papas? Ah, tá. Tem as fotos dos papas aí. Papa de avião. Imagina se o avião do papa cai. O que a galera ia falar, tá ligado? Nossa, ia ser um... Oh, eu sinceramente acho que se o avião do papa caísse, o papa Mr. Bean, se o avião do papa caísse, eles iam pegar um sósia e colocar no lugar e falar nada aconteceu. Porque ia ser muito estranho, tá ligado? Ou falar assim, ah, esse papa ele não era de Deus, ou tá nos planos de Deus matar o papa, sei lá, velho, ia ser bizarro. Mas a gente não vai falar só desse site, que agora eu cheguei numa parte bem estranha aqui. Agora, peraí, eu tenho um recado aqui da Alura que pode te interessar. Pra quem não lembra, a Alura é a maior escola online de tecnologia do Brasil. E nos próximos dias vai rolar uma semana de aulas gratuitas, que podem ser uma boa pra você que sempre teve vontade de aprender a criar jogos, ou mesmo de aprender programação, só que usando os jogos como uma base, que é um jeito bem divertido de se aprender. Vai rolar a imersão Dev da Alura e vai ser uma sequência de 5 aulas, onde você vai criar do zero 5 jogos completos. projetos. Então, um jogo por aula, cada vez numa complexidade maior. Vai desde pedra, papel, tesoura, até um jogo parecido com o Show do Milhão. Claro, tudo de forma prática, colocando a mão na massa, você mesmo vai fazer. Só que com a ajuda dos professores que trazem já bastante experiência do mercado de trabalho. Então, se você já teve curiosidade de conhecer os cursos da Alura, tá aí uma ótima oportunidade para ver se faz o seu estilo, né? Se é uma maneira de aprendizado que vai fazer sentido para você. E o mais legal é que depois desses 5 dias de aula, no final você ainda recebe um certificado de participação, que já dá para ser o pontapé inicial no seu currículo. Então entra no link que eu tô deixando aqui na descrição ou no QR Code e garante aí sua vaga para imersão dev da Alura. Só que vai rápido porque as inscrições são abertas por tempo limitado, beleza? Agora, voltando pro vídeo, a gente vai falar de outros, por exemplo, site das Nações Unidas. Que porra de site é esse, velho? Várias mulheres aqui de cores diferentes, etnias diferentes, e todas num estilo arrombado do Alegria, que eu sempre falo aqui, sempre xinga, é o estilo do Facebook, né? Vamos combinar. Pessoal aí com a mão gigante, sempre feliz, sempre dançando. Pior estilo de arte já inventado pela humanidade. Esse aqui ficou legal. Não tem português. Ponto negativo pra ONU. Vamos entrar em inglês então, né? Cara, piorou o site. Nossa senhora, que site horrível. Sério, parece que tem 10 anos, 20 anos o site. Daí tem um chimpanzé do nada. É muito mal distribuído isso aqui. Era pra ser tipo um blog, site de notícias. Só que acho que ele tenta ser tudo ao mesmo tempo, né? Além de notícias aqui em cima, ele já coloca aqui embaixo direto as planos sustentáveis da ONU. Tomas o trenzinho, foda-se. Vai colocando coisa aí. Vamos entrar em alguma página aqui. Nosso trabalho. Parte sustentável. Mano, essa parte tem que estar meio frutigra... Não, não tá. Tinha que entrar no site e ter essa imagem, velho. Falar assim, nosso trabalho sustentável de meio ambiente é chegar numa nação que pareça com isso aqui, tá ligado? Porra, pode crer, velho. Isso aqui que tem que chegar ao futuro, deixa da hora. Mas não, a gente vai levar uma torneira pra galera, que tá bom também, né?
Tá feito,
A pessoa só precisa de uma torneira. Ah, já tem um vídeo falando aqui. Pare de falar Merlin na internet, né? Essas são as consequências. Daí tem um vídeo explicando quais as consequências de você ficar falando hate na internet. Carreiras na ONU. É um jeito fácil de se envolver com a ONU, é participar de um desastre ambiental. Porra, que horror, né? Participe de um desastre ambiental na sua cidade e perca a sua casa. Quem sabe a ONU vai te ajudar.
Esta
Próximo site, Metrô de Tóquio. Puta, que site bom. Sites japoneses, eles já são...
Chega de live. Pelo menos dessa aqui. Mas tem que banir umas porcaria. Testar um negócio aqui. Tem essa opção, né? Cadê? Se é isso, tente aqui. Isso. Certo, adicionou a outra tela aqui, que é essa. Aqui. Essa na 4, porque essa me pega a tela inteira. Eu consigo. Meu Deus do céu. Ó. Aqui. Caralho. Mano, dá pra fazer total brainwash com essa porra, velho. Ó. Aí eu coloco coisa aqui, eu coloco coisa no celular aqui. É dica, que o negócio ele ambos pegam a tela inteira. E, tipo, aqui é a tela inteira, dá pra ver aqui, ó. É aqui? Repete aqui. Porra, velho. Quer dizer, eu consigo adicionar isso aqui? Aqui, ó. Colocar aqui no fundinho, ficar pegando a tela inteira. É, mas como que eu ia colocar um negócio? Esquece. Mudar essa aqui, velho. Ah, não. Ah, é, tem essa. É tela tudo, isso aqui é tipo aqui, que é pra quando vai fazer gameplay de jogo celular. Show. Não, puta merda, pior que tipo. Dá pra colocar um aqui, outro aqui. Um aqui, outro aqui. Nossa, que ideia de bosta. Tchau.